Yeah, great stuff. Oh, lovely. Yeah, no, that sounds
Smashing.
really good.
Right then, Mr. Meredith.
Okay. Yes, I'll do my best to be coherent. That's right.
I've looked at the website earlier on today,
Mm.
and I was looking at where you went to Cambridge, but you didn't.
Oxford.
You went to Oxford,
Yes.
Brasenose College.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was yeah, Brasenose College to study music, and while I was there, I also ran the college music society. So we had a series of concerts. So what for one of the years, I ran those and put together the program of events, and I also conducted the chapel choir while I was there for the last for my second year and my third year. Conducted the chapel choir. So having gone from a background of not being involved in Anglican church music at all, I was suddenly there conducting services and things, which was great fun. Really enjoyed it, and probably one of the things that sort of sparked my love of choral conducting. Yeah, the other thing I suppose that happened when I went to Oxford was I actually auditioned as a violinist.
All right.
Now I was never a good violinist, I have to say, and sort of I suppose just about good enough to be accepted into to university. But when I was there, they offered me the choice of do you want to continue to have violin lessons in college, or would you like to go down to the Guildhall to have vocal lessons, because they had a link with the Guildhall,
Uh-huh.
and actually that sounded very exciting. I'd always wanted to do more with my singing.
Yeah.
And so I went down to have lessons at the Guildhall with Arthur Reckless, wonderful name for a singing teacher. And interestingly, I was there at the same time as he was teaching Bryn Terfel.
All
And
right.
and I remember him introducing me to Bryn Terfel at one stage and saying, "Now, Tom, come over here. I want to introduce you to somebody. This is Bryn. He's really going somewhere." And now it was true, but it made me feel like I wasn't going anywhere at all. But he was right. He certainly was. Yeah.
Well, you did go somewhere. You went to Colne Valley High School. How did that come about? And
Yes, the high school. It was that was my first sort of long-term teaching post because when I came back from university, um, they said, "Did you want to go and do some research and things like that?" And I thought that by that stage I'd had enough of studying and I wanted to sort of get into the real world and do something. And I sort of drifted into teaching, I suppose, from both my parents. Well, my mum was a history teacher and then moved to being a primary school teacher, and my dad was a lecturer in medieval English, and so the sort of education was in the blood, I suppose. And so I came back up to Leeds and did a PGCE qualification at Leeds University, and then I had 3 separate years of teaching, 3 separate posts. First of which was in a special school in York for children who had a vast range of physical disabilities, and it was the most amazing year. I absolutely loved that year in teaching, but at the end of it, I was told in order to be more used to um, special education, you ought to get some experience in mainstream education. So I then got a job and I worked for a year at school in All Saints School in the centre of Leeds, and then I worked at Hanson School in Bradford again for a year, just covering maternity leave contracts. Um, and then our son came along, so I actually stopped and looked after Harry for a year and a half, and then started going back into education in terms of doing some supply teaching, and then got the job at Colne Valley High School. And at that stage, we were living in Bradford, so it was sort of travelling backwards and forwards to the high school. Um, but it was just before that I actually got the job with the Male Voice Choir. So I
ah,
sort of got my link
so
with
the chronology went
yeah,
Colne Valley Male Voice Choir and then
yeah,
Colne Valley High School.
that's right, yeah.
Ah,
So I was
so
actually making
did you know about Colne Valley Male Voice Choir then from? before the job came up.
To be honest, my knowledge of male voice choirs was very, very slim. I sat, when we were at school, we had an amazing music department, and we had a male voice choir at school, and sang some great fun pieces, Hernando's Hideaway, and all sorts of great fun things like that. I'd sort of been used to that sort of that sound, which was great. And I remember, I think probably my earliest memory of a sort of adult male voice choir was on holiday at one stage in Wales, and there was we knew of a guy who sang with Dowlais male voice choir, and I went along and just sat in on a rehearsal and sang with the baritones in Dowlais, and that was lovely. And I remember the guys being so welcoming, and just at the end, you've got a lovely voice, but when it came to singing Myfanwy, I was completely at sea, because I obviously had no Welsh, and these guys obviously just had a passion for singing that sort of music, and therefore sang it without copies, and just from the heart. And I just sat in the middle of this incredible sound. So I think that was probably about a year, maybe a bit more before I sort of put in an application initially to conduct Honley male voice choir. I applied to conduct Honley, but didn't get that. Didn't get an interview. Got a nice letter saying, unfortunately, we're not able to consider you for the post. I'm not sure quite why. But then the post with Colne Valley male voice choir came up, and so I thought, well, I'll give it one more go. Try and see how that goes. And got an interview and an audition, basically, well, a conducting. I had to go and take a rehearsal. So I have memories, aged 23, I think I was, of standing in front of a room full of men, same place we're still rehearsing now, with a video camera and the red light flashing in the back of the choir, taking a video of me while I was rehearsing, and I did both some repertoire that was sort of known to the male voice choir, but I also brought along a new piece, and I think that was the first time the choir did a piece called Jonah, which was I'm not sure if you've sung that one, John, but it's it's just a very fun piece, and we had a go at that one as well. I think it was quite nice that there was something that I was doing that was new for the choir, because I think that was one of the things they'd asked for was, you're going to be conducting this repertoire, and also if there's anything you'd like to bring along, then do that, and we'll have a go at it. And that was, I remember talking to Eric Shaw, who was at that stage in the bass section and on the committee, and a big advocate of Colne Valley Male Voice Choir, and a stalwart of the choir. And I remember talking to him years later, because they lived quite close by, and his wife Olive used to come and do some babysitting for Harry when he was little. And I remember when I was on a trip, taking him back from choir rehearsal at one stage, and he said, "I've got something I need to tell you." So I said, "Oh, right, okay." I thought, "Oh dear me, I'm going to be sacked. This is the end." But he said, "I didn't vote for you when the committee voted. I thought you were too young." And this was probably about 5 or 6 years after I'd been conducting them. And he said, "But I just need to tell you, I was wrong. And you're the best thing for this choir, and I absolutely love singing for." And it was such a lovely moment, just for somebody to say, yeah, we did the right thing, taking a bit of a chance on a 23-year-old who had no real experience of conducting male voice choirs, and here we are, 34 years later.
That's people on the management committee.
Yes, yeah, and yeah, still haven't managed to get rid of me. So yeah.
Uh-huh. So and that was it's 33 years ago, longer, isn't it? It'll be
Yeah, just over 33, because I think it was 1989,
right.
and I started. Yes, that's right. Yeah, 2 years before Harry came along.
Right.
That's right.
So it was almost the other way around then. You had some connections with the Colne Valley, and then you came across the job in Colne Valley High School.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
That's good,
Yeah, and and that was a lovely link. And again, I mean, I've been very lucky in my career at having these sort of almost sort of falling into place. Things that make sense and make connections. And while I was at Colne Valley, I mean, there were tremendous amount of musicians that came out of the woodwork in the school. And at that point, the Colne Valley High School still had a sixth form, so we had a range of instrumentalists right up to some really really talented young people. And there were Edward Asquith's son, or well, his son and his three daughters, two daughters were there, and the Atkins family as well. I remember that lots of families who were really really musical families, including your own as well.
Well,
And that was just finding people. I remember putting a notice in the bulletin, as we had to do in those days, to say there's going to be a meeting of anybody who's interested in coming along and forming a concert band. And I think we had at that first meeting about 20 people, and I just remember saying to them, this isn't good enough. I said there's at least 150 people having lessons, instrumental lessons in this school, and we're going to have a rehearsal next week, and there's going to be at least 50 of you there. And actually they just went and said, come on, let's give it a go. And I think we had a concert band of about 60 at that time in the school, as well as the music centre having its own concert band happening there on Saturday mornings. We did productions. There was a lot of sort of support for people, and the staff there, Stella Kaywood and Norb Beaumont and Lynn Copley and Alan Newton, who was the head at that point, and Sally Byrne, who I used to work with in the drama side of things, and Myrna Moore, all sorts of people who just were there making incredible things happen for those young people. And I think one of the memories of that school was what it did not only for those who wanted to carry on into academic areas, but people who wanted to go on into vocational things and things like the farm that was linked to the school. And actually, I used to love going and doing cover lessons, supervising lessons in the farm, because it was great. Because you went up there and basically said to the children, I don't know anything about what you do here. Tell me about it. And they were so proud of what they'd done. And Mr. Webley's been teaching us how to build a dry stone wall, and here it is. It was just a fantastic school to be part of for that range of things that happen. And we entered the Mrs. Sunderland Festival with a chamber choir. We sang Finzi, My Spirit sang all day. We did some incredible music making. And some of them, we had a group of 5 of the girls who formed a quintet, and they got down to the Royal Albert Hall with the Music for Youth festival. So there were fabulous things happening at the school, and we had quite a few of the sixth form lads and some in the fifth form, as it was then, year 11, who came down to the Male Voice Choir. So the reason I mentioned Edward Asquith was that his son James came and sang with us before he moved away. And in fact, that was one of the first things I remember about my audition rehearsal, was that we were singing Yellow Bird. And nobody had prepared me for the fact that we had the Phantom Whistler in the first tenor section. I remember this started, and I just stopped the rehearsal and I said, "What's happening? Who's expecting someone to have one of those nightingale whistles that they were blowing?" And of course, it was Edward, doing his stuff with his whistling finesse. So yeah,
it was the absolute hub of my children's social lives was Kirklees Music School, Colne Valley Music School, and so on.
right. Yes.
And
Yeah.
here's an incidental. It's a good day for us today. Harriet had just had a second baby this morning.
Oh, congratulations! How
A
lovely.
boy. So we got three granddaughters and a grandson now.
Oh, congratulations! Oh, that's lovely. Oh, give her my love, will you? And just say congratulations from me. That's brilliant. Yeah. Oh, excellent.
So, and then more from Colne Valley High School to Kirklees Music School, head of that, and that's been your day job all the way through since.
That's right. Yeah. Yes, I was at the high school for about 8 years. I did about half the time there as head of music, and it's strange. Looking back on it, it seemed like a lot longer, but look, it was only about 4 years I was head of music there, and we had some wonderful concerts. The concert in the town hall, which was a big sort of celebration concert that we had there. But I went on to be head of year as well, and we appointed a wonderful successor for me, Suzanne Moran, then
Oh
became
yeah.
Suzanne Hamilton, who took over, and she was superb, and it was great to work for her in the music department as well. And then I did 1 year when I looked at going back into special education. So I worked in a special school for 1 year in Longley School it was, in Huddersfield. But then the opportunity came up, and at that point it was as assistant principal at Kirklees Music School. So I applied for that, thinking actually this would be an ideal job for me, because it would be a promotion, but it would also be into doing more music making. And so that was in 1999. I applied for that assistant principal job, and was fortunate enough to get that appointment. And that was when we set up the youth orchestra again, because at that stage, having been in Huddersfield and Kirklees, sort of a hub for music making, there's so much going on. I think there were 7 youth orchestras in Huddersfield in the 1980s. And unfortunately, in the 90s, things had dwindled a bit, and they weren't cost effective, and they'd all been closed down. And when I started at the Kirklees Music School, there were no orchestras left. So in 2000, we had a come and play rehearsal, and we said, right, anybody who's interested in doing, maybe some orchestral repertoire. And we did a mixture of things like a movement of a Brahms symphony, but also some lighter music, some film music as well. And I think we had nearly 100 young people came along. And then we polled them to say, would you like to continue with this? Would you like to do it on a course basis, on a weekly basis, meet every holiday? What do you want to do? And they said, we'd like to do it on a weekly basis. So we set the youth orchestra up then, and that's now in its 23rd year. And that the youth orchestra has got down to the Royal Albert Hall again this year with its to perform in the school's prom as part of the Music for Youth Festival. So they are a talented group of young people, and it's one of the highlights of my job to be able to work with them. I did 4 years as assistant principal, and then my boss there, David Williams, took early retirement, and I took over from him in 2004, I think it was. So I've been principal since 2004, and we changed the name to Musica Kirklees in 2016. We were an independent music service, and we were only one of only 13 independent music services across the whole country. But actually in 2016, because with councils getting more and more strapped for funding, they withdrew all their funding from the music service. So we thought, well, let's have a relaunch. We became Musica Kirklees, and at that point we had to basically stand on our own 2 feet. We still have about 30% of our funding or so is from the central government. Now it comes via the Arts Council, but it's the rest of the money has to be from people buying into lessons, schools buying in activities, and buying into music centre and ensembles and things. So much though, at my heart, I would love access to music to be free for young people, so that they could, it was basically completely on desire and on talent and on the wish to be part of that kind of setting. Unfortunately, it's something that has to be paid for, and we need to pay our teachers to deliver the lessons, obviously. So it has to happen. We've set up a little gift of music scheme, so some young people can access free lessons if they really can't afford it. Then there are some paths into that, but it's only available to a small number of people, because it's hard to find money to support that. And in fact, that was one thing that the programme sellers at the Coldstream Guards concert, they were collecting money to put into that gift of music pot. So
I'm glad there can't have been that much in it. I mean, it was a fabulous concert, that Coldstream Guard concert.
that raised nearly 500. So
Did it? So it's not quite as bad as we feared.
no,
The
it was.
It was a fabulous concert, but the audience was fairly small, and I'm told that's it wasn't small by comparison with
No.
what the town hall seems to be getting at the moment.
Yeah, I think people
Uh,
are really struggling to get audiences in, which is whether it's a hangover from the pandemic or whether it's the financial situation that lots of households are now finding themselves in.
yeah,
It's a difficult time for the arts
yeah.
in general.
From our point of view, as the management committee, I mean, our problem, the chief problem with that concert was we got very little notice to
Yes,
look into marketing it.
yeah, yeah.
Joe couldn't, we couldn't get a clear answer from the guards about whether they were coming or not.
That's right. And then, of course,
For good reasons.
the Queen passing away, and that added even more uncertainty. With could they be freed up? But yeah, as you say though, for the people who were there, I've had conversations with people afterwards who just said, "What a fabulous concert! That was just absolutely stunning." I felt that the choir sang brilliantly at that concert. I think it was a real testament to them. We weren't at our largest in terms of numbers, but it was real high quality. So it was great.
Can I take you back onto the choir then? You're 33 years in, a third of a century,
Yeah,
third of 100 is under your guidance. Do
yeah,
you still get satisfaction from doing it?
absolutely. Yeah, it's strange, isn't it, how things metamorphose over time, and I suppose it started off as me really finding my feet, and the choir almost being, I suppose, the support for me as well as we achieved some great things. We did all those wonderful competitions, and we won Llangollen 3 times, and we've had a lot of success. But actually, it's grown to that stage now where I know so many of the choir very well. I almost regard it more as sort of coming to be amongst friends as I do to come and be people's conductor. So, and I think the musical world has changed as well, and it's moved from that quite fiercely competitive world to being one that recognises that music is actually much more than that, and it's part of our bigger world, part of our world of welfare as well as now has become very important for people that knowledge that singing is actually so good for you. So I think it's really my relationship, I think, as the conductor has changed over the years, and I think as I've matured and gained more experience and also had more lessons myself and taught myself more, I think I've sort of changed my approach, and the way I ask for things from the choir is probably different from how it was before. I'm not sure quite how I would categorize it, because I feel I know a lot more now than I used to know, and yet probably what I'm asking for from the choir is very similar, but it's just I'm probably asking for it in a slightly different way, and it's hopefully we're still achieving good results, but certainly I'm still enjoying what I'm doing, and I have occasional crises as a musician. I think quite a lot of us do, in sort of thinking, am I the right person? Am I still bringing what the choir needs to rehearsals? And I think you do a lot of soul searching as a leader and as a conductor, just to feel, am I still delivering what people need? And I remember talking with Jenny Baxter about it at one stage, and she basically said, in a nutshell, don't be so silly. Of course you are. It's why do you think people still turn up for rehearsals week after week? And it's but sometimes you need that kind of almost like a bit of reassurance to make you feel, it's still worthwhile. It's still going well, and it's still a successful partnership, which is what it feels. Yeah.
Well, we're into the second half of our centenary now, and starting into the thinking about the next 100 years.
Yep. Yeah.
Have you any thoughts about that? I don't know about 100.
It's right. I don't think I'll be there in the next 100 years. So, but Yeah, and I think that the choir has benefited, hopefully has benefited from stability, continuity, and for George Stead to have done what he did in terms of, 42, 43 years with the choir was absolutely stunning. And, that sort of, hopefully it makes the choir feel special. They get a conductor, and that conductor wants to stay with them, which I think is a hopefully the choir feel good about that, because they should do. They're a cracking choir, and they're a lovely group of people, and that's very important. I think we are making changes, and actually the centenary has been quite a focal point for that, of thinking about repertoire. What are we going to do? We've been lucky enough to attract some younger singers to coming into the choir, which is great for the longevity of the organisation itself. But we've got to make sure we look at what they would like to do in terms of repertoire, and we mix the old and the new, so that we are sort of, and it doesn't necessarily mean singing pop stuff. Young people like good music, but not necessarily all the sort of staple things that male voice choirs have been singing for the last 100 years. So I think that's important, that we look at that going forward, and I think we are looking at that area. There's also, I think we were mentioning before about the move from the idea of competition, to the idea of singing for people's well-being, but also doing it to the best possible ability that we've got. We all like to think that we're doing things well. I think it's something that ticks a lot of boxes for us, and if we can feel confident and feel proud about that, then that's absolutely great. But it's also not about striving for excellence at the expense of people's self-esteem, or their part of the organisation. And I love the idea that as long as somebody comes along and they can sing in tune, they can be part of the choir. They don't need to have experience or be able to read music or sight sing. We take that role on, and then support people. So that love of singing is the most important thing. So yeah, going into the next 100 years, I think continuing that search for new members, and we're obviously looking at that with our event that we're going to be doing over the spring term, which is going to be going out and trying to find men from within the Colne Valley area, or broader. You can be from anywhere, as long as they're prepared to travel, who maybe have thought, I'd like to find out a bit more about this singing lark, and it's meant to be good for me. Interestingly, it's now being prescribed by some doctors, are saying you ought to go and sing, go and be part of it.
Should be, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good for your mental health, good for your well-being, good for your breathing, good for your memory, all those sorts of things. It's a really good thing to do.
And it's good for your memory as well.
It is, yeah, absolutely. And the idea that the sort of the background of an organisation which is for men, is that traditionally we're not that good at talking about things, talking about emotions, at sort of expressing feelings, and that whole business of bottling things up is part of, I think, what people are seeing now in terms of an expression of emotion and of mental health and well-being. So finding a way of releasing those emotions, and of talking about things, or not necessarily singing about emotions. Perhaps that's one of the things that makes singing very, very good for men to do, and men to do together. So we're hoping that this new venture takes off. Again, like a lot of things that we've done at Colne Valley, we're looking at the long term. It's like starting the boys' choir off. We that happened, was it 12 years ago, and that's been something that those people behind the boys' choir have been working at for a long time. And in terms of developing that lifelong love of singing, we've seen some of those boys now come back and join the male voice choir, which is absolutely lovely. And hopefully some of them who have gone off elsewhere will think, I'll have a sing. I used to sing when I was younger, and I'll carry on singing. So wherever they are, they will carry on singing. So it's that looking at things for the long term, and so maybe we'll have this come and sing choir for next term. We'll do, I don't know, 6 rehearsals and a little event, and then we'll do the same thing next year and the same thing the year after, and gradually it gains momentum, and people feel safe and secure coming along to do it, and it'll give them a feeling of something that's worthwhile, and something that brings them some benefit, as well as hopefully a lot of enjoyment as well.
Right. Well, thank you, Tom. I don't know how I'm going to boil this down to one page before,
I'm
but
sure you find a way.
but it's been very interesting conversation,
Yeah,
and
thank
I'm
you.
glad you found the time to do it.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. I mean, I know I've been very lucky, in the opportunities that I've had, in terms of both my career, my teaching career, as a parent, as a child, being supported myself, when I've come up through things, and it's just, I suppose it's that desire in me then to try and continue to give that kind of thing to other people, and hopefully I'll carry on doing that for as long as I can. So.
So next target then, beat Godstead, is it?
Oh, yeah. No. Luckily, we don't actually get Ofsteded, as the music service. So no, I'm not going to be part of Ofsted. Definitely not.
No, no, beat Godstead.
So, oh, George. Oh, sorry. I thought you said Ofsted. Beat Ofsted. Oh, just that. Well, do you know, it's not something that ever crosses your mind. You just sort of think, "Oh, I want to do this for as long as I can," but then, but it was something that Lynn said. I said, well, another 11 years, and you'll have what George Stead did. But yeah, well, we'll see how things go.
Right.
Yeah,
Anyway, thank you, Tom.
you're welcome. You're welcome. Great stuff.